Well, hello, and welcome to the Horror Screams podcast. We are part of the Horror Screams Video Vault website, and this is actually episode 20. Wow. So I'm Stephen, and we have a kind of hairy cornflake lycanthropic werewolf special episode for you to tie in with a big anniversary coming up this time. So it's quite an exciting one. We're going to welcome back two very familiar voices, one of which is our regular host, Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Hello there.
How's it going?
It's all good, thank you. Looking forward to some werewolves. Love a bit of werewolves.
Oh, we do love our werewolves, don't we? Is it
Mhm.
is it our favourite? It might well be my favourite monster out of all of them.
Yeah, I think so. I do quite like a shark, but yeah, werewolves like being the kind of mythical creatures. Yes, definitely up there.
Yes. Well, apparently they're not real, but I think that in itself is a myth. But yeah, I would say give me a good werewolf over a vampire any day. I think.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm going to go for that. That's good to hear from you. And also, this month we welcome back a friend of the show, published author of The Lightning Thesaurus and an upcoming sequel. It's Matt. Hi, Matt. How's it going?
I'm great, thank you. It's nice to be on the show again.
Wonderful. I was trying to remember because of my terrible memory. I can't. When was the last episode you were on, Matt? It was a few months ago. What was the subject? Man. It's
John
gone.
Carpenter. We talked about John Carpenter and Stephen King, didn't we?
Yes. Small subjects.
Yeah.
Not a lot to talk about on those ones. Yeah. Wow, that was ambitious. We did. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, a warm welcome back to you, and good to have you both here. So we do have a real treat in store this time. It's 40 years since three of the greatest werewolf movies of all time were released, or at least for some it might just be two. So two are definitely fan classics that need no more introduction, and the third is a bit quirkier and a bit more underrated, but they're all well worth a look 40 years on, which is quite scary that it's been that long. So we'll be coming to that a bit later, but first it's our regularly kind of delved into recently seen, recently enjoyed, recently done kind of section in which we share some of the stuff that we've been up to. So we'll start with you, Matt, because you are a special guest this time out. So first of all, tell us a little bit about what you've been working on in terms of your book series.
Well, the second book in the sequence, The Dead Friend, is out on the 20th of July in ebook. We are currently looking towards a date for publication of the paperback, and in terms of my daily workload with the writing, I'm currently at work on the 10th in the sequence, as there are elements that build into a bigger story, but they're designed to be, you can just pick one up and enjoy it, but you get something else if you follow the sequence.
Cool. Excellent. Wow. And this is an ongoing thing with, you said before the show that you do have an ending in mind, but you're just not sure how long it's going to take to get there. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah, like there are things that I've set up that I want to resolve. Also different types and textures of stories I want to tell with the characters I've got. But there is a conclusion in mind, and I know it. E.L. Doctorow once described writing as like driving down a dark road and you can only see like the range of your headlights. You have to go quite slowly sometimes, but you can make the whole trip that way. So there is an overall arch plot in mind and an ending, but it's how much I want to let certain things breathe in the story, or what stories I really, really am compelled to tell with the characters.
Sure.
And also what, people keep buying it.
There is that as well. And the very first installment, The Lightning Thesaurus, is already out there via Enchanted Forest Publishing through the usual outlets. But for someone that doesn't know anything about it whatsoever, what's a very short and snappy reason that they should go and read it?
Well, I felt it's about something that I'd never really seen in fantasy fiction before, which is someone who's doing something because it's their job, and and also really wanting to carry on some of the energy and enthusiasm I picked up from a lot of different things that I was reading and also doing. So I was playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and the energy and the way that a story would breathe, and you'd have these big emotional moments, and also the idea amused me of a story about a 3 foot tall martial artist who puts himself out as a bodyguard.
Yes, which in itself, that line alone is it's a bit like when I remember discovering there's a film called The Amazing Mr. No Legs,
Yeah.
made in the 70s, and it exists, it's still out there. Yeah, that line alone should be enough to get people reading.
Make you want to check it out. Too
Yeah.
right.
Fabulous. Thank you, Matt. And since we've last seen you, you've obviously seen a lot of stuff, but give us a couple of things that you've seen in, let's say, the month since we did the last episode. What have you been watching of note in this period?
Saint Maud.
Fabulous.
That came from you talking about it on the last episode. It was uncomfortable in the way good horror can be. And it was a film that didn't stint in following its own logic, which to me is always a really, really strong indicator of a very powerful story. And without spoiling it, the ending is just perfect. The way that it gives you what you want, but then also a second later also tears that away from you as the final statement of the film.
Yeah, it's a staggering moment, isn't it? It is brilliant. We did mention it last time. It's at least in the UK, for people listening from the UK, it's on Amazon Prime. If you've got Prime, you can watch it for free. It's so worth it. It's such a tightly wound piece. It's only like an hour and 20 or something, at a time when films are a tad long. We might be talking about a long film later. And but every moment is perfectly done, and every performance as well.
Jennifer L is just,
yes,
like, she's compelling because she allows herself to be ugly in her characterization. Like, she's not, she doesn't give herself any sympathy.
No, it's unsentimental, isn't it? It's so good. Some great interviews out there with the writer director Rose Glass as well. She's really interesting to listen to, and one of really quite an impressive array of young filmmakers out there doing some interesting independent horror. Young female filmmakers, notably, like Relic is another recent one that you should watch. Saint Maud was great. Sarah, you need to watch Saint Maud.
Yeah. The more I hear about it, the more I really, really, really want to watch it. It's on my list. It's bumped up to the top now.
Oh gosh. Okay, that's good. It's official.
Yeah.
Nice. What else have you watched, Matt?
Army of the Dead.
So yes, I've heard of it. What did you think of Army of the Dead?
Okay. I really like the opening sequence. In terms of when it goes slow-mo, I also really like that version of Viva Las Vegas right up until the woman starts singing. And then it becomes a bit... Do you remember when Vic Reeves used to do Pub Singer?
Oh, in Shooting Stars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the club style.
God, that's totally it, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit Pub Singer, and I'm like... The problem is the best bits of any Zack Snyder film are the slow-mo beginnings. Like Watchmen, for example, that beginning sequence is an amazing bit of film. It's just the moment he then has to rely on such handicaps as dialogue, pacing. It kind of falls apart, and it was just like a city full of zombies should have been an idiot-proof concept. The whole... I'm not sure if it's broken pixels or robots, I think it's the former, and they're pretending that it's the latter to kind of excuse what is just not very good.
Yeah.
I think they kind of like, for people to start picking out things like that as well, it's gone a little bit too far. I mean, there are so many other things that went a little bit wrong with it. You don't really need to pick on those things as well. It's like
Characters.
it's seriously nitpicking at it. But yeah, there is a lot of characters, isn't there? And I think there was some good bits. There's some bits that I really enjoyed, like you say, Matt. The opening sequence I really liked as well. Even though everyone went, oh, it's just like an American Werewolf in London. I was like, no, it's not. It's just because it's in the desert. I mean, for starters, the werewolf one was in a moor. So if we're going to be picky about it, that kind of a thing. Yeah, I mean, the zombies, no one really does the slow zombies anymore now, do they? Like, or as good as they do in The Walking Dead. So everyone's kind of gone for the fast zombies, which I don't mind. I quite like them. But they brought a little bit too much to it, you know. They're trying to make them more than they are. Trying to make them intelligent, you know, having alphas and pregnant zombies. No, it just doesn't sit with me at all. But the zombie tiger was really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah.
But do you think the kind of like the fight scene with the zombie tiger was really off? Or was that just me? It was kind of glitchy in places, wasn't it?
I felt that of the whole film. I don't think digital is really that kind to Zack Snyder as a filmmaker.
True.
Like I sometimes feel that there's a little bit of an argument against that much clarity in filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
I like the look of certain older films because of the way that they've aged. You know, the way that the light looks.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Even down to the clothes and the fashions. You know, older films when people could smoke literally anywhere are fascinating.
Yes, yeah. Smoking is sexy in older films. Smoking is a big part of Humphrey Bogart movies and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, films like I don't know, you know, Brief Encounter. If you watch Brief Encounter, it just
really
seems like
sexy.
another world.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Army of the Dead, not so sexy. What do you think, Stephen?
I don't know where to start. It's just it depresses me really, and it's made me reconsider everything. Like I was there in the cinema back in the day watching Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, which was a real pleasant surprise at the time. And I watched Watchmen, being a fan of Watchmen, having seen the TV series, which I thought was incredible. I don't know if I could ever go back to anything else Watchmen-ish on the screen, but that's beside the point. But I liked Watchmen at the time quite a lot, considering the kind of huge effort that would have to be made to make that work as a movie.
Yeah.
But since then, he's not a human being, is he? He doesn't do humor. Everything is so clunky. He doesn't do genuine humanity on screen. The attempts at emotion in this were embarrassing. It's like the sad moment in an episode of Neighbours or something with the tinkly piano music. Absolutely awful. I like the zombie tiger, but I think my thing with the zombie tiger sums up the whole thing really, is that they show the zombie tiger. It's like, oh wow, that's cool, I was thinking. And then it cuts to people going, oh, that's awesome, or oh, that's crossing the line. Don't have that's not funny, that's not a joke, that's just completely ruined a potentially one good moment in the movie. Same thing as you guys, I guess. It's a 90-minute basically Escape from New York premise that's bloated into this endless thing with no good characters as far as I could tell. And no real humor, just Zack Snyder's idea of humor, which doesn't appear to be from this planet. The green screen shit is what ruined Man of Steel and ruined 300. Is something that is just awful to watch now because of that. And the really, really boring Batman versus Superman film. I think my biggest problem is I did laugh at the moment of oh god, what was it? Culture Club, at a moment of great tension. I laughed at that, but then I think my hatred of this film was was really being confirmed the moment they used the Cranberry Zombie, which is a really powerful song, not about zombies as it turns out, Zack Snyder,
Yeah.
but they've roped it in because it's called Zombie,
Yeah.
and Dolores is dead, which makes it worse, and yeah, then I really wanted to end it all, and as we're talking about American Werewolf, the fucking awful Bad Moon Rising cover version. What was that about?
Yeah, what the hell? Where did that come from?
The
Yeah.
gates of hell.
The gates of hell, straight from the gates of hell into your heart. Yes.
Sure.
And I don't think those things are forgivable. I like Dave Bautista. He's great in the Blade Runner sequel, in the relatively short sequences in. I like him in some other stuff I've seen. It's not his fault that this movie is bad. There's some other good people in it as well. But there is admittedly a couple of good splashy gore effects that don't just look like, as we've said, CGI things or green screen things. But it's a real shame. I don't think many people should be allowed to make tiny B movies on massive budgets, and this is maybe an example of why. John Carpenter would have done this. A lot of people would have done this really well on a very small budget, and that's a shame. But yeah.
Yeah.
I need to get so angry. I'm holding in
that's
for
what we need.
It's a very Netflix horror movie.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
They do seem to spend disproportionate amount of money on what turns out to be mostly inferior stuff.
Yeah.
They wanted their own Lord of the Rings with Bright, and it just
sure.
It.
I haven't seen it, but that's a good comparison point, I guess. Yeah.
It felt like there's a franchise attached to it, and it's coming whether we like it or not. They announced, we're doing an anime prequel. We're doing a story about why he's so interested in the safe. If you can't answer that question in your central movie, it's not a story that needs to be told.
Let's come to this.
We'll just copy something else as well with the anime thing, like they did with Seoul Station after Train to Busan.
Yeah.
Another unoriginal thing. Yeah. We'll take the zombie tiger, we'll take the zombie horses, and act like they've never been done before when everyone knows they have, and now we'll do an anime add on to it as well.
And it's like, they all of these fallen interviews where they go like, oh, what could you do for the next one? Why are you getting a next one?
Yeah. You should have done one good one.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's astonishing. Yeah, we will be haunted by this for a while, I guess.
Will. Oh, well.
Oh, dear.
Hopefully something better will come along. We need some more bits.
Well, there is good stuff. It just doesn't get the budget that he gets.
Yeah, there is loads of good stuff. Matt's already mentioned a tiny budget film that is incredible, and there's loads out there.
Yeah.
But the Netflix model, as you suggest, probably doesn't really, sadly, kind of accommodate that, at least not that often from the evidence we've got. Well, you do still get great things out of what they're doing, I suppose. You get things that maybe wouldn't have been made in other at that budget level in like Mank and stuff like that, I suppose. Even The Irishman maybe. But yeah, I don't want any more Army of the Dead. I suppose I could just ignore them when they come out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like it's come to your door and said, Stephen. Zack Snyder came to your door and was prepared to lecture you for hours over why he's the Orson Welles of zombie horror. Once the red mist cleared and you realised you were dealing with his corpse in your kitchen, that's a whole other scenario.
Bludgeon with a potato masher again. Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, I would probably be really nice to him. I wouldn't be able to. I've got all the anger out now.
Yeah.
It's a shame. I did really want to that's the thing. I did have good memories of the Dawn of the Dead remake, and I wanted to like it.
But then look at the fact that Dawn of the Dead had a James Gunn screenplay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Visually, he has some sublime moments, Zack Snyder, but just he needs better writers in the room with him.
Yeah.
Someone to go, look, if you're going to kill these characters in gruesome ways, maybe spend some time actually making us care about them.
Yeah, entirely.
You know, they're like Big Brother contestants. They're people you'll watch, but you wouldn't want to be in the same room as.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the same with not just this, is it? That's the same with quite a few similar movies at a similar level of budget.
Yeah.
They're not going to date well. A lot of these things, especially his stuff, but a lot of other similar things too. They're not going to age well. I mean, I don't get the point of having a joke cameo from what's his name, the Trump guy, Sean Spicer. How well is that going to age? In just well, even now, people are going, "Who the fuck's that?" Yeah. Oh, it's him. Hilarious. See what he did there. No one wants to see him. That's the last person. You know, we don't want the Cranberries in here, and we don't want Sean Spicer. He should be in Sharknado. They're not making Sharknados anymore, are they? I guess that's why he's in this.
That's probably why, yeah. No more Sharknados. In fact, we should rally for them to bring back the Sharknados in favour of.
Well, that's at least
sequel.
At least they're a bit more on it. Yeah, I forgive Sharknado, but even the worst Sharknados are more forgiving of than this, because at least they're not almost 3 hours long.
Yeah,
and at least they're not. At least they're never trying to pretend that they're possibly quite good. You know, and yeah. That's right. Zack Snyder is worse than the worst Sharknado movie. It's official. We've decided. So that's that.
Yep.
He's probably a nice guy. I hope he is. You know, I wish him no harm.
No.
But yeah. And he did make Watchmen. I still like Watchmen, but I'm not going to rewatch it in case I realise it's as bad as this. And I do remember that rubbish sex scene with Hallelujah, so I'm going to avoid it maybe.
Oh, okay.
Whew. Matt, was that it for your recently seen?
I think I've said enough.
Oh, bless you. Don't let you Sarah, it's your turn.
Okay,
what have you seen recently?
I'm going to quickly go through a couple of things. One that I've seen on your recommendation that you mentioned on the last episode that I really wanted to see is Psycho Gorman.
Oh, this is on a better note, isn't it? Yes, good work. Nice.
So much fun, absolutely brilliant. And I just want to say thank you so much for the heads up on the little girl, because you're right. Oh my God, she's seriously irritating.
That's my one reservation. It's tricky, isn't it? Because everything else is so good.
Yeah, she's an evil, nasty little cow. But, you know, if that was the way she was supposed to be playing the character, then she did bloody well.
She's had good reviews. Like I read a few reviews, which I don't usually do afterwards. But I get that she's obviously very confident. I mean, that's the word I do use, as opposed to
for sure.
insufferable. But she does have an impact, I think, on the film, and not maybe in a good way.
Definitely. But yeah, Psycho Gorman is great. The actual character of Psycho Gorman, I love him. He's just hilarious. Him and his hunky boys. I love that bit so much. And the brain blob, and just the characters up in space all around the table and stuff. It's just so reminiscent of the 80s, and great little monsters. They really thought about what they'd all look like. And yeah, brilliant.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it.
It looks fantastic.
Thanks for that.
The design is superb for a small movie, and it's by the guy you probably know, Matt, but it's by the director, amongst other things, of The Void. The Void is also a great film. If you get a chance to watch that. What was your favorite? Do you have a favorite line or a favorite moment in Psycho Gorman?
Oh, well, apart from the hunky boys, is the only thing I can really remember.
That's all I ever remember generally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hunky boys, and him fighting his friends in the woods. And there's the kind of like gas canister character and the weird witch that's got a detachable head and stuff.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. There's this weird moment. The dad's really funny, because the dad's kind of a useless schlub, isn't he? But he's played really well. And he has that weird anecdote where he's trying to give a pep talk to his daughter, and he's talking about this time that he accepted a creepy guy's offer to get into his car and look at his baseball card collection.
Yeah, and that was fine. You should totally do that or something, he was saying. Yeah, they are rubbish parents, but very funny. Yeah, it's good fun. Yeah,
check it out. I'm glad you watched it. It's on Shudder, everyone, so do check it out on Shudder.
Yes, everyone watch it now. I think quite a lot of people have. I'm probably one of the last people that's in it, but yeah, it's great. The other thing I watched recently on Shudder was something that I've been looking forward to. It's not strictly horror, but it's the amusement park. So it's
cool.
the restoration of a George Romero kind of educational type film that he filmed back in 1973, but due to his family and people in the George Romero Foundation, they've restored it and brought it back, and Shudder have released it. It's really grim. It's really quite powerful, as everyone has been saying about it. It's restored really well, but it still has an amazing feel to it. You know, it's still kind of 70s glitchy, really kitsch, like costumes, and the fact that it's set in an amusement park is great, but it's using that in a real sense of things. So I'll give you an example. It's showing how society treats old people. So they're put in different queues, and they're kind of duped into giving like bits of jewelry and stuff to buy their tickets when other people are just walking in for free. And then there's this couple that go on the bumper cars, but they have to do a kind of like driving test and stuff like that. And the police get involved. It's all very kind of surreal and weird. And you're kind of following one man as he's wandering through, and like you love him. He starts off as a really confident guy, like loving life, everything's cool, and at the end of it he's broken and crying and sitting in a room just all by himself, saying he's never going to leave the room ever again. It's quite heartbreaking, but it's done really well. And it's only less than an hour, like 53 minutes, I think.
Hey, do you know if that's what it was meant to be, or is it just that they couldn't restore all of it to feature length? Because I didn't know.
I don't feel like there was an awful. Like, it's kind of dreamy and trippy and kind of jumps around the place, but the way it flows, I would have thought that's how it was. You know, it's not meant to be like a feature length movie. I think it would have dragged too much. It's meant to be short, sharp, quick, little kind of. I don't know if it's meant to be an educational thing. I don't quite know who they would have shown it to at the time, but maybe it's just kind of a lesson in life. You know, this is kind of how people are treated. You know, maybe respect your elders a bit more type thing.
Yes, yeah, that sounds really interesting. I will get around to watch. That's also on Shudder, isn't it?
It is on Shudder, and yeah, I mean, I was just intrigued because it's directed by Romero, so you've got to check all his stuff out, really.
I appreciate the irony that Romero's been dead for a few years and he's still got a good new to us film out, but Zack Snyder's still alive, and he's well, never mind. It's not worth going back there. It's just not worth it, Stephen. That's what Mum would say.
But yeah,
what else is coming from George Romero?
Yeah, well, yeah, Twilight of the Dead might be coming as well soon. So as long as Zack Snyder has nothing to do with it, it'll be amazing.
Box tear from eye. Yeah, Romero was he was ahead of his time in so many ways, and I think I know there's a new like a remastered edition of Martin coming out soon, which is exciting because I always thought Martin was one of his most kind of incredible films, and possibly gets overlooked just because the Dead films are so culturally kind of impactful. But Martin's a great film too. And,
I feel like the amusement park's kind of along those kind of similar lines as Martin, because Martin doesn't show any like major vampire traits in the fantasy world of the vampire, does he? I feel like amusement park's done in that kind of a vein.
Yeah, he was doing interesting stuff in between the zombie movies, wasn't he? And that's great. No, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to that one actually. It's cool. Anything else that you've seen?
Yeah, I just want to very quickly slip this one in because I didn't mention it before we started recording it. But has everyone else got up to date with Inside Number 9 yet?
No. The last one I saw was the actor one.
Ah, yes. Yeah, everyone should hopefully be watching that because it's just so great this time. I know they're on their 6th season or something now, aren't they? And I think they say after everyone, oh my God, it's just brilliant. I don't know how they can do any better. And then the next season comes along and you're like, oh God, I love these guys so much. Yes, they're great. My favourite episode so far has been the Wuthering Heist one, where they're wearing masks.
That was very clever.
Diamond Heist type thing. Brilliant stuff. And the other one was Lip Service in the hotel room. A great Steve Pemberton performance in that one. That was really good, wasn't it?
That was incredible because there was a moment where I thought, oh, I know exactly where this is going, and this is just tragic because I want these guys to be together. This is a really
Mm,
painful story of this guy with the ex-wife or whatever it was, wasn't it?
hmm
And
hmm
this woman that's observing her just to ease his pain, really. And then it goes somewhere else. Oh, what? And
Yeah.
that sums up inside number nine. I think you're never ahead of them. They're always ahead of
Mm-mm.
you. With you know the twist is there because the whole series is about the twist, but it never feels like you've been kind of tricked or that you can guess it. Um,
Did you
it's
watch the
brilliant.
live one?
What you mean the Halloweenish one? That was for Halloween, wasn't it? The spooky one.
Mm, I think that's
Set
the
in the
one. Yeah.
TV studio.
Yeah. That's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's a mad twist in that, isn't there? That changes
Mm.
everything about 10 minutes in. Um, and same too. Did you watch the one? It's called The Devil something. It's the one where it seems to be a commentary, a director's commentary on an old discovered film. Did you watch that one? The Devil at
Yeah.
Christmas. That's the one.
Yes.
And that again has a fantastic rug pull at the very end. Ah, it's just brilliant. Those
They're
guys are
great.
fantastic.
They sure
Um,
are.
they're massive horror fans as well. Like their childhood is ours, really. You know, they were.
Mm.
I've seen them at Fright Fest a couple of times where they talk about the stuff that I used to do when you're like 12 and it's a Sunday afternoon, hottest day of the year, and you're inside watching Frankenstein movies with the curtains shut. You know, it's that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Bless them.
Any other recently seen, Sarah?
Okay, my final one is a recently seen. It's not necessarily a film or a TV or anything, but it's something I found on the internet. There's a new zombie blog on the block called Bites. I could try and say it
Ooh,
properly. Brain Bites. I'll say that again.
very good.
Yeah, it's a little blog I discovered that covers zombie movies from the year 2000 and upwards. So all your
Hmm.
kind of low budget, your kind of crazy, funky little ones, your sequels, your Dead Snows, your Collins, that kind of thing. It's only in its
Nice.
early stages. They've only been going for a couple of months, and they do a few reviews on things every month or so. And I think this next month is going to be a Romero special, so something to check
Oh,
out. Yeah, it's Brain Bites Blogs and the Facebook page of the same name.
Brain Bites. Fantastic. And it's like reviews of zombie movies, right?
Yes, that's
But
correct.
only
And
from
kind of
2000.
news. Yeah, 2000 and over. Nothing before that.
And that's good because the stuff because that tends to be overlooked. There's a few big ones, obviously Shaun of the
Yeah.
Dead and all that, but
Shaun Dead, yep.
there's some really good ones. Me and you often discuss, I often ramble on about how much I like It Stains the Sands Red.
Yeah.
Um, but other things as well. Like I think it's American Zombie, the kind of mockumentary thing that I really liked, and Fido. Was that post
Yeah.
2000?
I
Yeah,
think so, just about, yeah. And
just in
your
there.
your low budget ones that people might not have seen, like Before Dawn, Harold's Going Stiff, those
Last
kind of
Train to
ones.
Busan.
Beautiful.
Huh?
Last Train to Busan.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
yeah,
was
Big Sam, that's
covered for sure.
fantastic.
Ah,
That's incredible. Um,
There's so
oh,
many. There's
oh.
so many out there.
I just remember one of the great things I ever saw at a festival was in that setting, especially was Dead Snow 2, um, which which is great fun if you're on your own watching it at home, but as
Mm.
I'm sure you can imagine, with a massive audience, possibly with a few Johnny Knock Me Downs in their hand, getting a little tipsy. Dead Snow 2 was just absolutely fantastic. I like the first one, but Dead Snow 2
Yeah,
is, it's the aliens to Dead Snow or Dead Alien, isn't it?
it is. Yeah, they're both fantastic. And I really wish they'd have done more. They need to do some other ones. I wonder if there would be a Dead Snow 3.
Well, it's interesting, is because the classic thing happened, I think. I mean, there probably will be, I would wager, because those films are quite well liked. But the director, from memory, he did that thing of Hollywood were like, oh, here's some money. We want you. You're very talented. Do what we say and make a film,
Mm.
but we'll tell you how to make it. And he did the Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters film with Jeremy Renner and
Ah,
Thingy McGraw.
see, I thought that was all right, but mostly because of Jeremy Renner. I
Oh,
didn't
you
actually
saw him
realise that
there?
was him. He's lovely, he
Yes.
is.
He's all right, and he's all right. Do you know he was once in an episode of Angel long before he was the Jeremy Renner?
Oh, really? No, I
Fun
did not know
fact.
that.
Yeah, it's okay, but it's at the same time it's sort of one of those interchangeable sort of bigger budget monster
Like it
things.
definitely doesn't have the humour, for sure.
No, that's it, isn't it? And it's really watchable, but it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I wish you hadn't have totally sapped the personality out of the director that you got over, especially to Hollywood, to make your film.
Yeah.
You know, could you at least kept a bit of Tommy Vercola, I think his name was? Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, Tommy. Well, yes, check out Brain
Yes.
Bites and
Yeah.
your zombie things, a database of post 2000 zombie movies, marvelous.
Mhm.
So I've seen a few things. Keep it kind of brief. I've seen the cinemas are reopened, so at least in the UK, the plague is no longer killing as many people, so we can go out and sort of hang around at the cinema and watch things again. And I saw the new Saw movie, which is Spiral.
Yeah.
Full title, Spiral from the Book of Saw, but it's really Saw 9. And yeah, I liked it. I'm a Saw movie fan. I never really understood the backlash. I always thought the whole quote unquote torture porn thing was utter shite.
Mhm.
And I always enjoyed them. They're really fun. In a lot of ways, I always see them as a kind of modern day Dr. Phibes movies with these creative deaths, this incredible puppet master, mastermind, jigsaw character contriving these incredibly elaborate things. Even when he was long dead, he was still, you know, he had 26
Mhm.
disciples that were carrying on his work that he had planned the whole time, just so he can string this out for longer. But a lot of the time, they're really smart scripts. And it's one of the few franchises in horror that actually made great pains to tell a continuous story with continuity that you don't get in maybe the Jason films, where it jumps
Mhm.
5 years and hope you've forgotten the last one.
Yeah.
But yeah, Spiral is good. I mean, Spiral is, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites of this long series, but it's fun. You get to see Chris Rock and Samuel L. Jackson being son and dad. So Samuel L. Jackson is Chris Rock's dad in this, which
Mhm.
is itself probably worth tuning in for. Um, if anything, I mean, it's two movies in one, really. It's kind of a new Saw movie, so you do get, you know, someone in the first scene with their tongue nailed to a thing and, you know, blah blah. But then there's a police procedural thing featuring them, father and son, and a lot of the film I'm thinking, oh, actually, I'd rather see a bit more of the old Chris Rock, you know, my dad, Samuel L. Jackson stuff than I would. Oh yeah, there's another Jigsaw style murder on the loose, because there's not quite enough of Jackson in it, unfortunately. Um,
Ah.
but that's by the by, because they're both very good. Chris Rock is actually really good in it. He gets one very Chris Rocky kind of almost a stand-up performance within his character's role. But the rest of it, he's actually quite a good dramatic actor in this. And the plot holds up. There's some good gore in it. So it's, if you like Saw movies, I think Spiral will do its thing. And yeah, I won't give anything away because, like with all the Saw movies, the less you know, the better. But it's worth a look for sure. Um, Also saw Quiet Place 2, which actually I thought was terrific. If you're a
Yay.
fan of the first one, I guess you guys have seen the first one.
Yeah.
I haven't, unfortunately.
Take his horror fan card away. Not really, Matt. You can still keep it. That's just a little
Thank you.
joke. You're welcome.
Is it still the
Yeah, that's
same
fair.
kind of aliens?
Yeah, it's still the creatures, and the good thing is, although it does a thing at the very start, which is in the trailer, of showing you day one of this thing that's happened, so you get to see a glimpse of the mayhem that spilled out when they first struck or first arrived. The good thing is you find out almost nothing more about them, so it's not one of those things where it goes into painstaking exposition about the creatures, because it's best that we don't know much, really. I don't want to know any more about them. They're just scary. That's all
Oh.
that counts.
Yeah,
So
yeah, they
that's
are very
good.
scary. And it's got
It
Cillian
does.
Murphy in it.
It does. Cillian Murphy has a good role in this, actually, and I don't think it's spoiling it to say that the kind of um, the direction it was going in with a Ripley-ish Emily. Wait a minute, which Emily is she? Emily Blunt,
Yeah,
or is she
Yeah,
Emily someone
yeah.
else? Yes,
that's Emily Blunt.
a cacophony of Emilys out there. You got to get the right one. Yes, Mary Poppins Emily. Yes. So you think there's going to be an awful lot about her being kind of Ripley in this what is now becoming a franchise, but actually there's a refreshing focus on her daughter, played by the excellent child actor whose name is Millicent something, but I've forgotten what her last name is. But she's very good, and to have a effectively a deaf actress be effectively the star of this big horror sequel is, I think, quite a progressive thing, as we're
Mhm.
seeing a few more of this kind of things happening elsewhere. But she's great, and the suspense is great. The creatures are fantastic. It keeps moving. It's got some good surprises in it, I would say. And Cillian Murphy figures I suppose, more in the second half, and it goes in quite a cool direction. But yeah, it's a really strong sequel, I thought. If you can get to see it at the cinema, even better, because it is a
Nice.
proper big screen thing, and well worth waiting for. It was due, I think, the moment it was due out March last year originally, along with Sawish, I think, and then of course the Four Horsemen arrived and ruined everything, and gave us some nice furlough time if you're lucky. Yes, so check that out. Benny Loves You is not just me saying a nice sentiment. That's a film, a British film. Neither of you have seen Benny Loves You?
No, not yet, but it looks really cool.
Yeah, this is great. So it's written, directed, and starring a guy called Carl Holt. I think this is his first feature. And Sarah. So on a scale of 1 to 10, bearing in mind Psycho Gorman, how much do you hate children?
What, 10 being like I hate them the most?
Yeah, 11 means, oh, hell. 12 is nuclear, I guess.
Yeah,
Sean
yeah.
Spicer.
I would definitely say 10 or 11.
Okay, just checking.
It
Oh, that's
depends
good.
in what
11,
context, though.
very restrained. Well, the reason I mention it is because Psycho Gorman, we did both struggle. It's a great film, but we struggled with Flouncy McGavin or whatever her name was in the lead role of that. But the reason you'll definitely like Benny Loves You is not just because it's about this peeved teddy bear, really creatively slashing anybody that gets in the way of its love for the now grown up owner of it. It's because in the first few minutes, it's got this horrible kind of shrieking brat that not only is smacked round the face by her mum, and in the great joke, I think the mum first of all Googles if that's okay, smacking kid round the face. Oh yeah, it's okay, right? But then gets her eyes gouged out. So yeah,
amazing.
So,
I love it
guaranteed.
already even more.
It's in the first few minutes, so it's not really spoiling anything, but who cares? Because you've got to know you want to watch it. But yeah, it's guaranteed a big 5 stars on the Dead Child-ometer. So yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is cool. It's like a kind of mental Toy Story thing of this guy that's in his 30s, still lives with his parents, has a twat for a boss, but something terrible happens, which again is hilariously sick. And he ends up throwing away Benny, which is the teddy bear that he's kept hold of all of his life because it keeps the bad things away. But Benny doesn't go, so Benny keeps coming back. And Benny's mission is to get in the way of anybody that loves this chap, his owner, and that includes pugs. Yeah, he's unsentimental as Benny.
Yeah.
But it's a great character. Whatever trickery they've used to make Benny come to life in this is fantastic. He's there meeting out a lot of very gruesome deaths. But he's also scared of horror films, so he hides his little face behind pillows while his owner's watching horror movies.
Oh, he's
but
so
also
cute.
puts severed fingers in the toaster and other stuff. But yeah, it's this one, a bit like what we've mentioned earlier, is very 80s. So there's lots of kind of deliberate nods to Gremlins. There's kind of quotes from things like Aliens, the Terminator. There's even a visual bit that's very much like that classic poster of Ghoulies where the ghoulie is coming out of the toilet. But it's all really good. It's the only film I've ever seen with torture by Jiff Lemon as well. So
wow, inventive
Benny
stuff.
Loves You. It's really good. I don't know where
cute.
it is. I think I paid to watch it on Prime. I guess it's out there. Oh no, it's on Sky. If you have Sky, it's on Sky. I think that's where I watched it.
Cool. It does say on my phone you can rent it on Prime as well.
Whatever they're asking you to pay, Sarah, it's worth it.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm gonna do it because Benny just looks so cute. He kind of looks like a demented Elmo with floppy ears.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I get that. Yeah, Benny's really cute. I think they did market. It's a low budget film. I think it played the festival circuit, but I think they did actually make a few Bennies, as you would have to.
Yes.
Ridiculously, I don't think it has a disc release over here. I think it's only streaming. I think in America it does. So depending on where you live in the world, it's kind of out there. But it doesn't seem to have had the distribution that clearly it deserves. It's with an audience, I'd imagine it would take the roof off. But yeah, I loved Benny Loves You. So there. Other than that, I've kind of been on a 90s binge, so I've been watching some of those I've become addicted again to the fill in the blank from hell Hollywood thrillers of the late 80s and early 90s that followed Fatal Attraction. So stuff like The Hand That Rocks the Cradle,
Nice.
and Unlawful Entry. They've all got names like that. Basic Instinct is another which branches off into erotic thrillers that were coming out back then. But they're all really fun to revisit. I watched Sleeping with the Enemy, where poor old Julia Roberts lives with a controlling husband, and you know that he's back on the scene when she goes to the cupboard, and good God, the jam jars are in alphabetical order again.
Oh God, he's here. He's behind me.
I think and these movies are really horror films that are a bit embarrassed about it being a horror film. So we're a thriller with serious dramatic issues. No, you're not. You're using the back from the dead trick that we've seen in Halloween, and your idea of a big scare is the jam jars being in the right order. But yeah, they're really fun, and yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I've got a few to go. I've got things like Poison Ivy to rewatch. There was a big one, The Temp. They run out of interesting job titles by then. Single White
Yeah.
Female's a really good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But it was a whole industry, and I remember reading Fangoria at the time, and Fangoria actually created a whole column in the early 90s called "It's Not a Horror Film," because they would interview producers on the sets of films like this, and in every interview it'd be, well, yeah, it's not a horror film, it's a psychological drama, really, that just happens to have a psychopath with a big knife. And so they created a whole column to accommodate the sniffy movies, and then of course Scream arrived, and then people were tripping over themselves to say it was a horror movie. But yes, do check out the very up and coming films Fatal Attraction and Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I think I'm exhausted now, but yes, so that was our recently seen. I think we've covered the cream of the crop. Do check out some of those ones. There's some cracking titles in there, but we must move on because it's 1981, except it's not really, but it was 1981, 40 years ago. And 3 movies came out in ridiculously quick succession of each other. Werewolf movies that I think are some of the best werewolf movies of all time. 2 of them are considered classics, really. I would imagine most people would say The Howling and American Werewolf in London are real gems. And Wolfen, I think, is a little underrated, as we said. The first of these 3 that we're celebrating, because it's the 40th anniversary this year, is Joe Dante's The Howling, which came out in March 1981 and kicked off a sort of strange mini cycle. I think there's a memorable thing in Stephen King's Danse Macabre, which was written, I think, in the late 70s, where he says something to the effect of, there hasn't been a good werewolf film in about 15 years. And then he was immediately contradicted by 3 really good werewolf films coming out, once his book was out. But so to kick us off, Matt, you have chosen from this trio of classics, you've chosen to have a little chat about The Howling. So tell us about The Howling and what you like about it, man.
For me, it carries the kind of glow of nostalgia to it, because I was 5 when it came out, so I didn't see it until I went through my trawling through the archives of Maglan video phase. And it represents, much like the Fangoria column you mentioned, in the way that it has some really, really powerful credentials. Like Joe Dante got Gremlins off the back of this.
Yeah.
You have Rob Bottin's special effects, and he did The Thing, which we've talked about previously. And it has like a really nice structure, the whole bait and twist with where she has the encounter with Quisp, who Robert Picardo plays him.
Yeah.
And so she's in this place of trauma, and also it doesn't occupy. I respect it and really enjoy it. Actually, it held up really, really well, actually, which I was quite surprised by. Unlike a film which I remembered loving more for a long time, which was The Howling 2, mostly because it's called Your Sister is a Werewolf.
That's just such a hilarious film. Yeah.
But it's really, really nice cast. Dee Wallace, Patrick McNee. It's got a kind of like cozy narrative that I liked from horror fiction of the time as well. Like you have to have the comfort. It's not as there's some really, really nice human undertones to it as well. The way that sort of Bill is immediately seduced when he gets there, and when and obviously the reason that she's there is because what happens with where they shoot the serial killer in front of her. And then the ending, again, as was one of the things I've always liked with a lot of the really, really good horror stuff is that it follows through on its own internal logic. The thing is with horror is a lot of films, like the ones that sort of were, as you talked about with the old Fangoria column, that didn't see themselves as horror movies, is because they lacked the narrative courage to kind of really go things through at their natural conclusion.
Yeah.
Which is obviously where she transforms herself into a werewolf on a worldwide broadcast. And then people believe it, it's a special effect.
Yeah. That's a fantastic series of cutaways, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of the typical audience, excited kids. And then, oh, it's amazing what they do with special effects. Yeah.
It's a really nice old school cast. You got Dick Miller, who became like a real Joe Dante regular throughout his career.
He's fantastic. Yeah. Is this the quintessential Dick Miller cameo? Well, Mr. Futterman's a bigger role in Gremlins, but he's great, isn't he? As the occult shop owner.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's some great stuff, and Robert Picardo as well. I love him in that.
Yeah, Toy Soldiers as well, wasn't he? He was the truck driver.
He's in all of them. Yeah.
You're just used to seeing him like nowadays in Star Trek Voyager and stuff, and you're like, dude, you were so cool as a werewolf. Now you're a hologram.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah. He's genuinely frightening. I think, and it's true of one of the next ones we're going to talk about, is that Howling is remembered as a horror comedy, and American Werewolf is too, but neither of them really are. They have a great sense of humor, but this is really sinister, especially the first act.
Yeah, I would say
like
so.
A different kind of movie, isn't it, for about half an hour?
Yeah.
And he's kept in the shadows. It's all really quite disturbing, I think.
And just the whole look of the effects, that the way they change and stuff, it seems to go on forever. The weird bubbling heads and like close-ups on various parts of their body. It's I was kind of like sitting there thinking to myself, I don't know which one I prefer, the American Werewolf transformation or the Howling. And they're both really brilliant, but I feel like with the Howling, when it goes on for that much longer, and you just see all the like gooey little changey bits and stuff, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, there's a few, isn't it? 1981. So there's this and The Beast Within, and then there's another one I was trying to think of just then. It went out of my mind, but I think it's Amityville 2, where very similar bulging kind of bladder effects. And they obviously were really excited by them because the scenes go on for ages. The Beast Within, it goes on forever, and you're like, okay, well, we get the picture. Let's move on. But clearly they were reluctant to let any of the footage go because it was obviously it was quite a really cool looking thing, and it was so much about at least two of the films we're talking about tonight are the rewindable videos of the 80s, aren't they? They're like, wow, let's watch that bit again. It's incredible, and I think it holds up really well as far as the effects go. It's it is
sorry, I was gonna say it has a really good soundtrack as well.
Yeah, it's really impressive, isn't it? These are low budget film. It's Pino Donaggio that did the Brian De Palma films like Carrie and many of the others, and he did Piranha for Joe Dante as well, which was Joe Dante's film before this. And both, I think, are very similar in the sense of humor, but also both films have, like you said, a proper score, a proper horror soundtrack, and both films know when to be serious, I think, as well.
Yeah, I think it does. Like you say, you were saying that it has a kind of comedy element to it. I think with the soundtrack and stuff is what adds to it. It gives it that kind of like fun sounding bit, because there's a kind of bit that you think is a bit odd placed when they first go on the hunting trip, when they're in the retreat. There's this really jolly, like plinky plonky kind of music going on, and you're like, is that really how it's supposed to be? But it does it. That I think that's what you're trying to say with the humour and stuff. That's kind of the undertone to it. You don't sit there and think to yourself, ha ha, that's hilarious. But you're just like, oh, there's kind of this jolly tune going on over something that you know is going to be quite gross.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit sexier than American Werewolf as well, with Marsha and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah. He gets it on with her, doesn't he? In the woods. Yeah, Marsha's quite raunchy. There is, again, which you don't see that much these days. And there's both. I think, well, David Norton is got full frontal nudity in American Werewolf, doesn't he? But you don't often see this level of nudity in horror films anymore. People are too embarrassed to try and do it in case they get lambasted for showing boobs or something. But yeah, it is incredible. I think it's in very much Joe Dante's films. I think are all it's very similar to this because they're very fanboy horror films. I love the cameos in this. One of the things that always makes me laugh is the very tiny bit of Roger Corman as the guy that goes into the phone box and he's looking for loose change from the slot, which Joe Dante had worked with Corman for years, and obviously was a great penny pinching producer that was responsible for so many massive film careers. And here he is, a well-dressed guy looking for a few pennies. And even people like Kenneth Tobey as the grizzled cop, like refugees from 50s monster movies, are filling in. Patrick McNee has a massive role in it. I've forgotten how much he's in it. And every character is named, or most characters are named after a director of an old werewolf film. Terry Fisher and George Wagner, I think, is Patrick McNee's character, which is really cool. But it's jokes that don't intrude because you either know that stuff or you don't. So it doesn't matter if you don't, because it still works as a horror movie. I quite like the idea of this refuge of these LA people going to this weird kind of commune. That's quite funny, isn't it? I quite like the culture clash. And the first, when they go there, I think she's mentioned about worrying that everyone's going to be a bit of a weirdo. And the first thing you see from the commune is John Carradine kind of howling at the moon. It's just so it's that kind of place. But yeah, it's a really cool film. And I like the shift. I like the shift from the sleaziness of the start, where it's in Skid Row, and there's all the sex shops, and feels a bit like something like Maniac or something for a little while. You're not quite sure to see this in the cinema, because it had, I don't know if you guys remember the poster. I think it was also the cover of the book when the book was re-released
with the face through him.
It's disturbing, isn't it? It's a great image. And I think it's a fair representation of the film, but I think anyone going to this just knowing the poster really, and especially the first maybe 20 minutes, would be expecting something pretty brutal, I suppose. I like that it came out in this period, and that it's an adult film as well. I think we talked about this the other day, but this is the period of teen slashers. And American Werewolf and Wolfen is the same as well. They're kind of about unfashionable people as the main characters. You don't see that many horror films from then in America, or even especially now. People, I guess, Dee Wallace maybe in her 30s or something. You don't see that many horror films driven by someone like that. When we get to Albert Finney's arse in Wolfen, obviously that's another layer of erotica coming your way. Literally. I think it's got so much going for it. It's cracking.
It still
Werewolves
has,
are worse than
even
cockroaches is Dick Miller's line that I like a lot, where he's great, isn't he? Dick Miller.
He is. Man. Yeah, we love him.
Yeah, he was someone we used to look out for in these in pretty much everything. The Terminator, he's the guy in the gun shop. Piranha, he's the kind of seedy owner of the summer camp. Not too bothered that the piranhas are eating the guests. Any other thoughts on The Howling? I think it's great.
For me, it speaks to, there's this real, when they used to adapt horror novels into films with a lot of care and understanding for the difference between the two, which is the secret, I think, to a really good adaptation.
Yeah.
You know, there's sort of name changes, which there always is, but also it smooths out some of the, because I've read the book a few times. It's a really, really nice, concise little horror novel, more kind of pulp thriller than anything. But that's where, like, you obviously get the juxtaposition of the scene between, you know, sleazy Skid Row porn theatre through to what you think is what she thinks is paradise and a place of healing, but actually underneath it's worse than what she was when she was facing Skid Row.
Yes.
You know, it's a narrative device that you call like the golden trap. You know, something like the Hunger, for example. Like the perfect trap is immortality. You know, you're something you think you want, but actually in that film it posits that it is its own form of hell.
Yeah. And it's interesting as well, because especially as we've been talking about certain films, but it leaves you wanting to know a bit more as well. I think like this secret society that's overseen by Patrick Macnee, that's having to keep up with changes in society.
Which speaks to the maturity of the storytelling as well. I mean, I think it's a John Sayles screenplay.
It is, yeah, like Piranha.
So,
Piranha was as well.
You know, you had sort of A-list screenwriters and directors and actors, well, mostly working with character actors because they were cheaper. You know, and they were almost sort of, some of these horror films were almost training wheels for these directors, much, you know, like the gentleman who did Dead Snow and Dead Snow 2 and then got Hollywood money and was given something that didn't actually showcase what made him unique.
Yeah, very much so. And that's the cool thing about Joe Dante, I think, is that he, like all of his follow-up films, I think, but he kept his persona in all of those big films. Gremlins is such a Joe Dante film. It's just he happened to have a massive amount of money to get all the puppets working and everything. So a couple of months after the release of The Howling in the US claimed something rather different. So the middle one of our Werewolf trilogy from 81 is Wolfen, which is a really unusual film, a big studio film released by Orion, based pretty loosely, I would say, on a late 70s Whitley Strieber novel, which I think is called The Wolfen rather than Wolfen. And it's an interesting film in a lot of ways. I think one is that it's the only narrative film that Michael Wadley ever made. He's most famously a documentarian who did Woodstock, obviously a milestone documentary. And he had a miserable experience on this, from what I can gather. The studio kind of sold him up the river. I think they forced, you can, when you watch it, I think you can see a few things that feel like they've been shoehorned in, including a shitty cat scare, I seem to remember is in there somewhere. But the studio clearly wanted a more conventional horror film, and they really sold it as something it wasn't. So the marketing was pretty pants. They replaced the original composer. I don't know who it was, but they replaced him with James Horner. He's the man you have to thank for writing the score for Titanic, by the way, and also co-writing My Heart Will Go On. Thanks, James Horner.
Oh wow! Yeah, cheers.
And James Horner did a more conventional horror kind of action score, which again isn't really what he had in mind. So anyway, Michael Wadley never made another film, at least a fiction film, after this. I think it's a really cool film. I mean, from what I've read, and it's obvious when you watch the film, is that this is maybe a werewolf film at a stretch, but moreover, it's a snapshot of urban life in 1981. You know, he talked about wanting to show how South Bronx neighborhoods were being decimated, do a story about the haves and the have-nots. And the location shooting, what I love about a lot of films in this period is the New York location filming, when you could go out there and film in these places. And he deliberately chose I think it's the windmill at Battery Park near Staten Island, which was a symbol of early Dutch settlers there, and the opening scenes unfold there. There's a fantastic finale as well, which we'll come to. But yeah, the location shooting, I think, is a big part of this. So it's a horror movie-ish with a lot of anger underneath it, with a plot which is about how the killing of an extremely rich person triggers an investigation of loads of missing people that no one gave a shit about because they were disenfranchised, New Yorkers that have just been brushed under the carpet. And it's coming from 1981, so it's when all this stuff is going on. New York is changing. Terrorist attacks of certain kinds were very much in the news at the time. So that's so much the background of Wolfen. But also, even that aside, I just think it's a really cool mixture of stuff. I think it's got some good horror in it. There's some excellent effects by Tom Berman, who was one of the many, I suppose, rising makeup effects guys in this period. We often talk about them, and we'll do in a moment with American Werewolf. Social commentary, obviously, police procedural. There's quite a nice. I like the paranoid surveillance thrillers of the 70s, and that kind of carries over here with a degree of that running through the movie with the modern surveillance systems, and of course the kind of point of view wolf shots that we get in so many movies after this as well. It's got an amazing cast, ridiculous cast. Never again, obviously, because some of them are dead, but never again will you see Albert Finney rubbing shoulders with Gregory Hines and Tom Noonan. And
Diane
we were talking
Venora.
about I'm sorry,
Diane Venora as well.
yes, who's fantastic and very underrated. Yeah,
she was in Heat as well. Like she's
yes,
like one of the unsung character actresses.
she's terrific. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very underrated, and there's a lot of them out there, isn't there, like her. So this is a really well qualified cast, and we were talking about the adult leads of The Howling a little while ago, and very much the case here. Your hero for this 1981 mainstream horror film is this schlubby, hard drinking, middle-aged cop. Sarah's mentioned that you see his arse in this, which obviously for a certain niche, an audience, is quite an erotic moment. There's a lot of cynical humor. He's not a very likable guy, but because he's Albert Finney, you like watching him. He eats crap and he's jogging to try and get rid of all the crap he's eaten. Gregory Hines is almost a cliche character of the wisecracking coroner, which you get in a lot of horror films. Actually, there's one in The Howling, which I think is played by John Sayles. But in Friday the 13th sequels, there's usually a coroner that's eating a sandwich while doing the autopsy. It's that guy. But Gregory Hines makes a lot of that role. So it's fantastic. And Tom Noonan, who is one of my favorite actors, who has later on in the 80s has a fantastic role in Manhunter, which is unforgettable. He plays a guy who has Basil Exposition's role, really, but he makes a lot of it as well.
I love him. He's my favourite character in it. I really do like him.
He's great, isn't he? Yeah, absolutely. He comes out there and says all the stuff that probably the studio forced them to shoehorn in about the parallels between wolves and Indians, and all this other stuff. But you don't begrudge it because he's doing such a good job of it. Edward James Olmos has an early role here. So, I think this is really quite something, actually. It doesn't all work. I mean, it's not perfect. And I think maybe we can't blame all of that on studio interference because, how do we know? But maybe it's probably too sluggish for the typical genre audience. But then again, it wasn't aimed for the typical genre audience, really. It's one of those horror films with something else to say that we do get from this era. And I just love the finale. I mean, the finale is where I suppose you get the goods that the trailer probably promised people all the way through. So the finale has a decapitation. And obviously early 80s was kind of decapitation central for the freeze frame videos of Mrs. Voorhees' head being knocked off. And here you get that as well. But you also get it with a clever kind of callback to Gregory Hines earlier talking about French Revolution decapitations where the head's carried on talking. Yeah. You get a moment of that. And fabulously, probably one of my favorite horror moments of this sort of period is the I think he's the police chief whose head is lopped off right outside the Federal Hall on Wall Street, which is the precise spot where Jordan Belfort arrives in Manhattan in Wolf of Wall Street. So it's got all this stuff going on, plus Diane Venora and a very, very underplayed love interest sort of angle going on there. And Albert Finney, who I kind of miss, actually. But yeah, that's me rambling. But yeah, what's your thoughts on it? What's your thoughts on it, Sarah? Was this your first time watching it? Is what I wanted to ask as well.
Yes, it was, and yeah, I mean, I agree. I was expecting it to be a werewolf film. So when
Yes.
you're seeing like the points of view from the wolf that's hunting people and stuff, I was expecting it to go a bit quicker and actually be a werewolf. But then but by the end, I kind of realised that's not what it was about, and the fact that they used real wolves, I was like, okay, that's possibly, hard to do. So you can't keep focusing on a real life animal. So I thought they kind of covered that up quite well, like in kind of trickery and stuff. But yeah, I did find it a little bit slow. But yeah, I do agree with like some of the like humorous elements and stuff to it. Yeah, right. Albert Finney standing in the morgue whilst they're like cutting people up, eating a cookie and stuff like that, which is kind of funny because at the beginning your kills and stuff are mostly off screen.
Yeah.
But then there's stuff like that. And one bit that absolutely cracked me up was after Ferguson, the Tom Noonan's character and stuff, he disappeared. There's this one bit where Albert Finney comes out of his apartment and a guy pushes Ferguson's motorbike past him across the street. Did you notice that?
Oh, I think that rings a bell. Yeah, I think so.
I was like, that's actually quite brilliant. I love that
That's
bit.
yeah.
But yeah, the Albert Finney's arse kind of put me off. I was like, that's a little bit unnecessary. But not only do you get that, you also get a crazy naked Indian guy on a beach as well.
Yes, you do. Yes, there is, and you get full frontal corpse nudity as well, don't you? There's a
Yeah,
good amount of arse in this,
there
if
is.
arse is your thing, of course, of a certain kind of arse.
I remember you messaging me whilst I was watching it and then kind of going, so how's it going? I was like, oh yeah, it's a bit slow. And then literally straight after that, I was like, yeah, there's now a crazy Indian guy on the beach. Yeah, it wasn't what I expected it to be because of The Howling and because of American Werewolf. I was expecting it to be along those lines, but I'm kind of glad that it wasn't. They tried to make it different. They tried to make you think it was a werewolf when it wasn't. And were they actually real wolves? I have questions.
It's kind of ambiguous, isn't it, really, as to what they truly are.
But they are cool.
Yes. I think so.
In the book, they're essentially Native American spirits.
Restless.
Yeah. It brings up quite some old primitive themes which come from the Stryber book. And I agree with you both entirely. It's a bit of an odd duck because I wasn't aware of the studio interference, but it makes a lot of sense. Like you could clearly see that there were opposing forces pulling the film in two different directions. One of which was to give a big Hollywood werewolf thriller, and the other was to give a kind of a quiet mood piece, about the sins of the past being visited on the present, alongside some really, really nice noir elements, like all of the things of like, the shabby cop sort of like clawing his way towards redemption, the wisecracking coroner. They're all really useful tropes in crime fiction, particularly like, it's essentially noir with ghosts.
Yeah.
And it's a lovely little film, and I like it because it doesn't quite work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. It is that. In fact, I quite like this hybrid of those two elements that you mentioned. Anyway, a movie that I think is more successful all the way through than this is Angel Heart, which does something similar, which is beautiful and disturbing and brilliant. And that's very much, isn't it? That's combining, well, it's actually a period set movie as well, but that's combining the noir thing with voodoo and with this incredible twist. It's possibly a little ahead of its time, but I know what you mean all round. It's very downbeat. It leaves on a very downbeat note, doesn't it? It almost feels like his final voiceover, it positions the movie almost in a kind of eco horror cycle that was still running at that time. It's all about man's arrogance and in this case, they wanted to reclaim Manhattan back through the wolf. And no, I think it is really interesting. I think it's probably better regarded now. It was a commercial failure at the time, but not necessarily badly reviewed. I think some of the critics at the time saw what it was trying to do. As you said, it doesn't quite work, but a lot of the time it's just very interesting. Fits into that period as well. I'm quite interested in that period of New York set movies, and there's a lot of New York humor. There's a lot of nice little details. I like where they're talking about the fact that New Yorkers keep snakes as pets rather than dogs because they don't have to walk a snake. All those little details, I think, as well as Diane Venura's sarcasm and the interaction with Gregory Hines and Edward James Olmos, for whom this, I guess, was an early role. Yeah, it's a cool movie. Do check it out. It's not really had a proper, I suppose, reflecting its lowly position on the scale. It's not really ever had a full singing, dancing reissue, but there is a Blu-ray or two out there, which is worth picking up. So yeah, that's the red-headed stepchild of the trio, but well worth watching. We now have what is indisputably a classic and one of my all-time favorite horror movies, for sure. So Sarah, you have the honor of introducing An American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, I do. This is American Werewolf in London, directed by John Landis, and I'm sure everyone has the same feelings about it as I do, is that being the age that we are, which is almost, well, pretty much the same age as the movies, so I watched this when I was a little bit older. So I think I probably watched this in like 86 or 87 when I was still too young to watch it. But so many people of my time did. And it represents our childhood, our introduction into horror, really, doesn't it?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with me, on my first watch, I was absolutely petrified. I don't think I got past the first the scenes on the moor. I think I was even scared when they got to the slaughtered lamb and you meet the characters in the pub. I think I was scared of them to start off with, which is supposed to be, really. Brian Glover is very threatening in that one. But yeah, the two main things I remember from it from being a child was them getting attacked on the moors and then the transformation, and I kind of forgot everything else that was in between. You forget the comedy elements to it as well, but they kind of liven it up and try to make it funny, and it combines my two favorite things, which is zombies and werewolves, because they bring Jack back to warn David of what's going to happen to him. So they bring Jack back and you can see him he's basically kind of like a mind zombie because David's the only one that can see him, but he starts off quite slashed and ripped, and as the movie goes on he gets more and more rotted and gross, but still really funny. There's just
and
so
cheerful,
much to it.
yeah.
Really cheerful. He has some great lines. It's so great. It's a very emotional film. It kind of plays on you. He spends a lot more time at the hospital than I remember when I first watched it. Like I say, I kind of just focus on the two main bits. But his whole time in the hospital when he first sees Jack and meets Alex and stuff kind of builds everything up, and you really get to like David as a character, don't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And that's massively important for how good this film is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. They've done it the right way. They've set everything up as best they can. You know, they've created these great characters who were just out backpacking around the country, really, just coming to visit England, and then end up on the moors and get attacked by a werewolf.
Does it always, every time I watch it, because that interaction at the start between David and Jack, Griffin Dunn and David Norton, is so good that you almost wish he doesn't die. He doesn't die. It's,
for sure.
You want more of that, don't you? Because it's so funny and they're so adorable.
But that is a scary moment when they're out on the moors.
It's brilliantly
really,
handled,
really
isn't it?
Absolutely. Just saying, do you think it's a dog? And then they go like, oh shit, it's right in front of us. You could just feel the dread creeping in from them. And then, David falls over and Jack's just like, oh, you just scared the shit out of me. And then you think, oh, it's all okay. And then, Jack gets got.
And I think growing up, as you said, it was a terrifying scene. It still is terrifying, but I never quite knew when that happened. And I was never sure of the moment where the wolf jumps out, because it's very cleverly timed.
I had my hands over my eyes, probably, because you just knew that moment was coming up. I definitely watched that film in several stages because I was so scared, but I really had to see. I'd get to the point in the moors of like, right, okay, no, I've got to turn it off after he's been attacked, and then you're like, later, okay, I'll carry on watching a little bit more. Nope, can't watch anymore. Switch it off again. But
so well done.
I've watched it so many times now.
Yeah,
it's just part of my childhood. So much nostalgia and love for it.
It's perfect. Yeah.
What's your favourite bit on it, Stephen?
Oh, it's hard, isn't it, to say. The Moore sequence is amazing, I think, and it's interesting, I think, as well. This is one of those films that we've had a few of in this podcast history, of a really genuinely scary horror film made by a non-horror guy. John Landis is a comedy guy, and that shows a lot in this, but he only ever really made 2 horror movies, and they're both, I think Innocent Blood's really underrated. But yeah, I really like the pub sequence. I think that is such a great, because I always liked the old pub sequences in the Hammer horror films where, some uptight British guy would walk into this place with people with false beards on, and the music would stop. The guy would sit at the piano, or dart player in this one would stop. You're not from around here, are you? Oh, but, and then it would be the warning: don't go to Castle Dracula. It's bad down there. Don't go. And they'll go anyway. So I love that sequence because it does have that feel of a Hammer horror pub scene, and I presume that's what it's sort of. But I think even scarier, and I'm sure, although I don't think I had many nightmares or many after effects of watching horror from a ridiculously young age. I think I did with this. The most nightmarish thing is the scene where they're watching the Muppet Show and the Nazi stormtroopers show up.
Oh.
It's just a horrifying moment. It's only a dream, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, the weird, crazy kind of, monster type things, And
I think, this was in the period where big shock effect came from, it's only a nightmare, as in Carrie and Friday the 13th, but I think this might be the first of the double false shock, because it's he wakes up and then Alex gets stabbed, but then he wakes up again, so it was a dream within a dream, or a nightmare. I think that's the much copied, but I'm pretty sure I don't ever remember seeing that before American Werewolf, where it's a double trick. But either way, the Nazi invasion while David's family is watching the Muppet Show is harrowing.
That is pretty scary.
Of the non-transformation bits, that's my favourite bit, I think, maybe. What about you, Matt? What's your
I view it with the same kind of love that I do for Ghostbusters. It's essentially like a darker companion film to it. If Ghostbusters had sort of gone for it's R-rated, isn't it, in the States? Like if Ghostbusters had gone for a hard R, that's what American Werewolf in London would have been. I just love the way that whole final sequence with the police and
oh god, yeah.
One of the lovely things about werewolves as sort of forces of antagonism in film and even in fiction as well is you get like a vampire once the fangs come out and they float and drink blood. That's pretty much it. But with a werewolf, you can build up the connection between a normal person and then this big thing, and you kind of they're horrible, but also you wouldn't mind being one yourself on some level.
Yeah, sure.
And what American Werewolf in London does particularly well is it kind of shows, it's a curse and ends in death and horror, but also you can knock over a police van running through it. You can literally, you can literally just, take bullets and tear people apart. It's a really, really visceral moment. It comes from Landis's understanding of pacing and comedy. And it was a really commercially successful film as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
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 you can have your cake and eat it too with these sort of things. And I think American Werewolf in London does that in a way that a lot of films, like I think that the Andy Machete is someone who's clearly watched a lot of Landis and took inspiration from him.
Mhm.
He keeps marketing it to kids.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. All of these horror films that we've talked about all have actual functioning adults as protagonists.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the mainstream horror now sort of has kids as protagonists.
Mm.
And they're all beautiful. And, you want someone who has to work in a call center or, works at McDonald's. If you make horror films about them, but throw the big stuff at them, that's basically why Sam Raimi does as well as he does.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, entirely. Yeah.
But the transformation sequence is just it's pretty much Rick Baker's calling card for everything he ever did afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's one of them things where every frame of it justifies the amount of attention. Like it's uncomfortable, It's like you see him contorted into agony,
It is painful to watch.
Yeah, like it's the most non-sexual. It's the opposite of sexual and nudity. Like it's just like they have to go. Look, I've basically my career has been building to this moment. You are going to goddamn watch this, and you don't mind that being the case. But it's a wonderful movie for all the reasons you said, and I had the biggest crush on Alex.
Oh, Jenny Agutter.
Oh. She was like an adult woman who and also as well with David Norton, like that's a classic leading man role.
He's great, isn't he?
Like matinee heartthrob. You don't really get that anymore because they don't feel that people who watch horror movies would accept that. But that's what draws in. That's why a lot of the ones going back to the Fangoria thing. That's why they wouldn't call themselves horror movies because they wanted Julia Roberts in it.
Yeah.
As a portrayal of an ordinary abused woman played by Julia Roberts. Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? David Norton is, I think, really underrated in this. You don't see an awful lot of acclaim for what I think is a really lovely performance of a really likable character, a doomed character. You're totally on board, and Jenny Agutter had a great run at this point. I kind of remember watching Walkabout and Logan's Run, and the shower scene in this is actually one of those few horror love scenes that you don't begrudge. It's actually a really good scene. The same for their love story generally.
Character between the two of them.
Yeah, absolutely. For once, it's not just there to tick box A for boobs or whatever, which was the same in a lot of these films. The transformation is unmatched. I mean, this was revolutionary, and watching it on video in the 80s, it was like nothing else really, having watched a lot of the older werewolf films where they were the classic way of doing it. Usually guy starts getting an itchy collar, disappears behind a desk, comes back from behind the desk, and he's a werewolf. Same for Jekyll and Hyde transformations. And there was no precedent for this. Obviously, The Howling came out, but was being made at the same time, and the two intertwined really. But yeah, it's astonishing. The use of Bad Moon Rising right before the transformation as he's pacing up and down, I think is great. And then the total lack of music when he's actually transforming is in the bright light of the room is a really stark experience. There never has been a good CGI werewolf transformation, which I don't think there ever will be really. This is just an astonishing piece of work. I like the other stuff though. I like the shots of the full werewolf. I think that works really well. I think they do a good job of using it sparingly. The classic and really creepy section at Tottenham Court Road station with the uptight businessman is really scary, and you just see that. I think you only see that overhead shot at the bottom of the escalator of him coming into view. Is that right?
Yeah.
And that sequence as well is genuinely frightening in this film, which was sold as, from the director of Animal House, a different kind of animal. Hang on a minute, this is a truly scary film.
There is a bit of continuity error in that kind of sequence. Watching it again,
No.
yeah, just a tiny little bit, because like he's running through the tunnel and looking behind him, and you think the werewolf's like right behind him, and then later on when he's running, it's like miles and miles behind him.
Oh, is that Oops.
Yeah.
Oh.
But we overlook that.
Something.
Sorry?
Grabbing yourself a bottle of water.
Yeah, as you would have to. Yeah, keep hydrated.
It's like in the Legend of Leslie Vernon, isn't it? He says like you gotta have elite cardio for this stuff.
Oh, that's a great one. We should cover that. Yes, that kind of covers all continuity errors in the Leslie Vernon. Oh man, yeah. No, it's terrific. The humor is really good. I think the humor still works really well. I like the stuff where he steals the kid's balloon. He's woken up nude in London Zoo. Again, the location shooting makes it so special. I think the fact that they really did that stuff in Piccadilly Circus where it goes mental. And of course, again, probably another of my favorite sequences, the seedy Soho porn sequence with the recurring joke of John Landis of having something with "See you next Wednesday" in it instead of obviously "See you next Tuesday." With what's her name, porn star Lindsay Drew, I think it is, isn't it? Is it Lindsay Drew? Oh yes, I'm sure it is. That's hilarious because that is just like I think the portrayal of Britain from this American's point of view of the TV consisting of 3 shit channels, one of which is darts, one of which is an advert for the News of the World, and I've forgotten what the other one is. Here's a vision of what British porn is like, which seems fairly convincing. Oh, sorry, wrong room. Absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I think the action's amazing. I think the Landis's thing was always crashing lots of things, like in the Blues Brothers, wasn't it?
Yeah, like you say, at the end in Piccadilly Circus and stuff. Okay, so it's about the werewolf who busts out of the cinema, but then all hell breaks loose. You have a bus swerving, which hits the car, which knocks into a motorcycle, and then someone from the top of the bus falls out of the bus and then gets run over. It's like craziness.
Yeah, you get the feeling if he had the same budget as Blues Brothers, where that stuff goes on for about half an hour, that sequence would have been 3 times longer. Which is quite cool. Yeah, I love that stuff. I think this is such a perfect mixture of humour and tenderness, which you don't tend to get in here.
Sure.
The small moments are really good. Like you don't notice them when you're 8 and you're thinking, "Wow, look at that!" But the sequence. Is it in Trafalgar Square? Well, anyway, he's in a telephone booth and he phones his family and he gets his shitty sister. And he's trying to tell her that he loves her, but she's giving it all that. And it's such a vulnerable moment for him. And you're rooting for him so much. And that's a heartbreaking moment because you kind of know where it's going based on the werewolf tradition that the film constantly reminds you of via Lon Chaney and all the classic movies it sort of hints at.
You're either going to kill loads of people or you have to kill yourself. It's really quite depressing. There's no cure for it or anything.
Yeah, that's it. And the ending, I mean, you've mentioned it, but it's a necessarily harsh ending. It's executed in a certain kind of way that I think, I mean, I suppose this is more of an independent film that was released by a big studio, by Universal, but I can't imagine they'd get away with it in such a harsh turn, especially the final shot where it suddenly cuts to black and you've got the very upbeat version of Blue Moon for the credits. It's quite hard hitting, I think. The last shot of poor old Jenny Agutter sobbing. Amazing. Any other thoughts on American Werewolf in London? Of course, there is no sequel. We don't have to mention American Werewolf in Paris, which doesn't exist.
Oh, God, no. No, it's just a classic. It's a great one to revisit and rewatch. And it has the little cameos. I keep forgetting that Rick Mayall is in it as chess player 2.
Yes, Rick Mayall.
I think he just laughs and does his usual kind of weird scowly face.
There's Frank Oz is in it, which is quite another nice tie-in to Muppets, isn't it? It's Landis's thing was loads of cameos usually, but I think maybe wisely in this one there wasn't really all of the cameos he ropes in for his later movies where he got like his director chums to pop up, or I think that's quite useful that didn't happen here, because this is a bit more serious tone than anything else he made.
Didn't they get Brian Glover to come in on a couple of episodes, or was it maybe it was just one episode of Bottom back in the 90s?
Possibly.
Wasn't he the gas man one, Mr. Rottweiler or whatever they called him?
Wow.
Show.
Yeah, I remember watching that so well with my dad. And that's great that Rick Mayall would have had a connection with him. That's really quite sweet. I miss Rick Mayall. I'm still quite sad about. Enormously talented guy. Yeah, it's classic, isn't it? Absolutely classic. But yeah, so I mean that's the three werewolf movies. Of the three, which is your favourite? What's your favourite, Matt?
American Werewolf in London.
Has to be, really, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah,
You said
same for me.
It's just a really, like, there was. I'm not saying all commercial movies now are bad. You know, it could be my age, probably is, but they used to make them with a lot more kind of warmth.
Yeah.
You know, a lot more brevity. Now it just feels like something like It, for example, which more often than not, like these days, the movies that annoy me are the ones that I enjoy as a sensory experience the first time I watch them, but then the further away I get from them, the more annoyed I am.
All right.
And I get that from modern movies more than I do from like the films we've talked about on several occasions. Like I can revisit American Werewolf in London like I did for this, you know, it's like really lovely homework, you know, even for the stuff where we didn't get time for, like Hannibal. Like I rewatched Hannibal again simply because it's glorious. You know, and also with some of the writing I do, like I like sort of seeing how other writers explore those ideas and visuals. You know, and that's the wonderful thing about the werewolf is that it's an incredibly, you can use it as metaphor. I mean, there's great examples of it in other media, isn't there? Like, you know, you think of I don't know if you've ever read the Alan Moore Swamp Thing.
No, I've not read Swamp Thing, actually. I need to read Swamp Thing.
Alan Moore who wrote Watchmen, did an absolutely superlative run. And one of the stories in there is about women who turn into werewolves. And it relates to Native Americans. And also, I don't know if you guys have ever done any like tabletop role playing, but there is actually a series of games where you play werewolves.
All right.
Yeah. I play in one at the moment. It's Werewolf the Forsaken, and you play like different tribes and everything. But one of the main things is you actually can turn into kind of like that classic wolf head, bear-like body type creature.
Wow. Cool. Yeah. No, it is. I think you're absolutely right. I think this is such a tightly wound picture again, isn't it? It's like an hour and a half or so, and it has so many shifts in tone. It has so much heart, which I don't think you get with a lot of these things. But it also has that stuff which you see in everything now, which is a kind of knowing reverence for the older werewolf films. It talks about the old Wolfman. They have a chat about it, don't they? About what Lon Chaney had to do and working that into its own exposition about werewolves. Yeah, I don't know. I think while we have 2.5 hour zombie films, I think it's good to look back on an era when things were a bit more disciplined.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that was American Werewolf, which is still wonderful. And yeah, it is the best of the three, I think, by some way. As much as I love The Howling and I do like Wolfen a lot, I don't think there's any contest there, really. It's the one I've rewatched the most by a country mile also. And that's the ultimate test, isn't it, of something holding up.
Yeah.
So just before we go away from the old werewolf subject, is there any other werewolf films after this or before this even that you think is almost worthy of talking about in the same breath as something as great as the John Landis movie? What do you reckon, Matt?
Ginger Snaps.
That's a good one.
Yeah, Ginger Snaps. Because it sort of kind of captures the observation that teenage girls are the most terrifying things on earth. And it makes explicit that connection between, you know, the cycles of the moon and the cycles of the woman. And it, you know, and it actually, it's one of those, it was a sort of a series of sequels, like the period setting worked really well in one of the subsequent ones. I'm going to probably state, you know, Underworld doesn't really work for the werewolves at all.
Oh, it's awful.
Just, yeah, it's interesting enough, the game, the RPG I was talking about, the studio that made that particular role-playing game sued the makers of Underworld because they borrowed so many elements from it wholesale. But it just, no. People think werewolves and think of like them, and it's just like, no, they're not werewolves to me.
No, they're not. No, I put the Underworld. The Underworld movies going on and on. Does anyone actually like them? I've never met anybody that actually likes them. Who's paying for these things? It's like the Resident Evil sequel. Well, I get that they sell everywhere, but it's just painful. And Van Helsing was another one which tried to revive these monsters and looks dated the day it came out.
I know you hate Van Helsing, but I really like it.
Oh,
it's not. It's good.
It's just terrible. I think Teen Wolf was more intense.
The one thing I did like about Van Helsing was how he changed into the werewolf form by tearing his skin away.
Yeah.
Oh, he does tear his skin off.
That's a really good. I tell you another one, tangential. In the Company of Wolves, Neil Jordan.
Oh, that's a cracking one by what's the Angela Carter, isn't it? The book.
Yeah, The Bloody Chain.
Yeah, that's quite beautiful. Yes, yeah. I'd forgotten about Company of Wolves, which is shameful. That's because so many of these later ones have done the Red Riding Hood thing, haven't they? But that's the one that did everything so well. Neil Jordan generally actually is a fantastic. He did this similarly great job with vampirism with Byzantium. Did you see that?
Gorgeous.
Oh, I know that one, but I haven't seen the other one.
In the Company of Wolves is amazing.
Oh, check it out. That's
Okay.
You get to see Angela Lansbury as well as a nice old lady for a change. Or so we. Yes. Yeah, there was a lot of werewolves in the 80s actually. Isn't there a werewolf in Ladyhawk as well? Do you remember
he turns into a wolf, doesn't he?
He's a shapeshifter. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're cursed, aren't they? So like.
That's right.
Yeah, he's a wolf by night and she's a bird by day. Some variation. I've seen it a couple of times. It's actually a really good film.
It's charming, the 80s, but it's quite interesting as well, isn't it? Yeah, I like Ladyhawk, and I suppose Teen Wolf. When you have a film like Teen Wolf, I suppose is a sign that the cycle is perhaps at that stage where we've gone to the jovial teen version of it. But I think you're right. Ginger Snaps was a great comeback. There's quite a decent. It doesn't quite work, but there's quite a decent Eric Red film called Bad Moon, with I think it's Michael Paré in the lead. It's not one of Eric Red's best films because he's a cracking writer and director, but it's still good and it's still in that era where there was more practical transformations going on. So Bad Moon's like mid-90s, I think.
Dog Soldiers as well.
Dog Soldiers has some great werewolves, doesn't it? Some fantastic, again, man in a suit kind of werewolves, for sure. There are good ones. What do you think? Have you both seen the Jack Nicholson film Wolf?
Yes, I really like
that.
I
like that. That's a very different take on it. It's more, I suppose it's on the line of more being about office politics and the relationship with Michelle Pfeiffer's character. But I think it does interesting things with the idea as well.
Like Witches of Eastwick, you know, I don't know if it actually was I don't know if it was from a novel, which is Eastwick was. Like it had that kind of like prestige actors essentially doing horror movies, but they
Yeah.
couldn't call them horror movies.
Oh, entirely. Yeah. Yeah. And that I remember being a huge thing for a lot of this stuff. Even some of the big gothic movies, they went out of their way to promote Bram Stoker's Dracula as a romance, a
Yeah.
gothic romance. Is that maybe that's the first time I kept hearing that being said. All right, okay then. So why is Sadie Frost shagging a werewolf? Yeah, but Wolf is a genuinely good film. I think it's a shame that it had that classic tag, but it is really good. If only to see Jack Nicholson piss on the shoes of
James
what's his
Spader.
name, James Spader
Yeah.
in the bathroom. It's a fantastic moment. Sadly, after that, I really struggle because I think of things like Underworld, which is dreadful, and Cursed, which is the one of Wes Craven's really bad films.
Yeah. Late
Total train
phases.
wreck. Sorry, I didn't catch you, Matt. Sorry.
Late phases.
Yes, Late Phase is really good. Have you seen it?
Yeah, yeah. That's on Amazon Prime as well, isn't it?
Oh, Sarah, have you seen Late Phases? Also known
No.
as Night of the Wolf, I think, in some places.
Oh,
That's
okay.
really good, and it has a
Yeah.
tie-in to tonight because it's got Tom Noonan in it, and actually Tom Noonan in a really lovely, chummy, sweet role rather than
Yeah.
the icy psychopath of a few things he's done. Um, yeah, it's a lovely film. Nick Damici, who's also terrific in a lot of things. It's kind of set in a retirement home, and it's got the pathos of some of the movies we've been talking about already, but also some fantastic, as far as I can remember, all practical transformation and gore effects. That's possibly the standout.
Oh, cool.
I think we're due for a really great, probably independent werewolf film because we've had things like from again young international filmmakers like Raw, which is a take on cannibalism. The French film's really good. There's a lot of talent out there that I think means we're guaranteed to get a great werewolf film soon, which will be as smart and clever as some of the stuff we've been talking about. Any others that you can think of, guys? Obviously, there was a lot of Howling sequels.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Have you
marsupial one. Yeah, that exists.
Howling 3, The Marsupials with Barry Humphries, aka Dame Edna
Yeah.
Everage?
Also,
Amazing.
whatever episode of The Howling it was with Sybil Darning as Stirber werewolf bitch.
Number 2,
Yeah,
literally. And Christopher Lee in sunglasses and Jimmy Nails in
Mm.
it.
yeah.
Um,
Oh,
Howling 2 is mad. It's absolutely fantastic, I think. It's terrible, but
yeah. It's glory. It's like Showgirls with werewolves.
which is the best recommendation you could. What I like about Howling 2, Sturber Werewolf Bitch, or Your Sister is a Werewolf, is the end credits where they endlessly repeat Sybil Danning's stripping sequence, but with clever cutaways to Christopher Lee with a really disapproving look. It's just because he's in some 80s Eastern European goth club or something for
Yeah,
much of the film. Um, it's absolutely bonkers. Is Howling 2, but it does deliver the goods. It does have pokey, grisly, stretchy bladder effects and gore, and
Yay.
of course, Sturber Werewolf Bitch quite a lot. The Howling season, the Howling series after that went bonkers still because I remember I think it's number 7 where the franchise. I don't know who owns it or if anybody does, but Howling 7 has line dancing werewolves.
yeah,
Oh my god.
Howling 6 is quite good because Howling 6 is more of a kind of Ray Bradbury-ish thing, set around a carnival with Bruce Payne. I think Bruce Payne plays the vampire in it, and there's a werewolf, and it's somewhere between Ray Bradbury and old Universal horror. So I do like Howling 6 and Howling 5 because obviously I have to watch all these things. Howling 5 is more of a 10 little Indians thing in a big castle where it's guess the werewolf. Oh, that reminds me. Have anyone seen The Beast Must Die from the 70s?
No.
very long
Which
time ago.
which is great, where Peter Cushing is a werewolf hunter and there's a bunch of people. One of them's a werewolf, and as you try and figure out that there's a werewolf break, the movie stops and it says, "Who do you think the werewolf is?" It's a bit like a kind of live action Cluedo, and it goes through all the suspects. And it's somewhere between blaxploitation and Agatha Christie stroke Cluedo. Yeah, Beast Must Die is a proper 70s job, that one. But you did mention Dog Soldiers. I suppose Dog Soldiers is probably the most well liked, popular
Yeah,
werewolf
Mhm.
film of recent times.
Mhm.
Uh, What's your kind of best one of the most recent years, Sarah?
Well, there's a couple. There was one in 2015 called Howl,
Howl's
which
cool, the one
was
on the train, right?
yeah, werewolves on a train, or a train breaks down in the woods and werewolves attack it and stuff. That was done really well, and they're once again the kind of practical, weird, like walking on two legs, scary
Yeah.
kind of things. That one was really good. And there was a TV series. I just need to look it up as to when it was. I think it's very early 2000. I think it was about 2003. But there was a TV series called Being Human, which starred none other than Aidan Turner before he became Hot Dwarf in the Hobbit and Poldark. He was a vampire in Being Human, and you had Russell Tovey, who was the werewolf, and a young lady, Leonora Critchlow, who was the ghost, and they all lived in a house together. But it was great watching the transformation of the werewolf in this, because they really concentrated on that. Again, it was practical effects and proper, like,
Nice.
scary transformations and stuff. It was really good. I think it ran for about 5 seasons, but the first 3 seasons are the best, because it has Aidan Turner and Russell Tovey in it, and then it all kind of switches up in season 4 and 5 along the same kind of things, but they do less and less of the werewolf stuff. So the first 3 seasons are the ones you want to watch on that. But I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know too many people that have seen it. I think it kind of went a little bit under the radar.
It was a thing, wasn't it? I was aware of it.
Yeah, they tried to do an American version, but that was horrendous. I think I only watched halfway through the first episode and just went, no, I can't do it.
There's a lot of those.
But yeah, the British version of it, really, really good.
Yeah. That's cool. I always wondered about that. I wasn't sure. I just never got around to watching it, but it sounds really good, actually. Werewolves on TV, there isn't a lot of them. I know there's a werewolf window cleaner in an episode of Hammer House of Horror from the 80s called Children of the Full Moon, where Diana Dawes is a landlady or a matriarch of this family, and just remember being a bit spooked by a werewolf window cleaner, as you would be. Hairy sponge, I suppose. True Blood, yes, yeah. I watched some of True Blood. I watched the first 3 or 4 seasons. I rather enjoyed True Blood. I just lost my way.
True Blood was great, but I wasn't impressed with the werewolf transformations. The vampires, yes. The werewolves were just people turning into wolves.
Male models,
which isn't my
wolves.
Well, oh yeah, exactly. That's true.
Yeah, they always seem to have time to like have a diet that basically means they don't see a carb for years at a time. But yeah, that was a show that kind of jumped the shark. I remember quite specifically. It was with the introduction of the Werepanthers. I was like almost buying it. Like even when they introduced like the Fey realm, but then they introduced Werepanthers and.
Yeah.
And I just sat there and went like, I'm done with this show. But it was also. Sorry, Sarah.
I was going to say they tried to do that again in the Creep Show Christmas special, didn't they? With the were-tortoise and the were-boar, and
that's a good one. Yes, I'd forgotten about that. That was really fun.
But that was funnier than the True Bloods version of
that was played for laughs. Yeah, that was the Christmas special. Yeah. Has anyone watched the Teen Wolf TV series? That seems to be going on for a long time. It seems to have about 6 series or something. It's intrigued by it.
No,
I don't know if there's a. Yeah, there's a good werewolf segment in the excellent horror anthology film Trick or Treat with Anna Paquin.
Yeah.
Which I always thought was a rather nice spin on it.
Gordon Cox as well, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, he's fantastic in it. Yeah, the Trick or Treat actually.
Baker as well.
Brilliant. Yes, I'm still scarred by Dylan Baker. Is it Happiness where he's the dad?
God, yeah.
I don't.
Steve.
Do you know what? I'm a huge fan of Todd Solondz, but I've got Happiness. I've been wanting to watch it for a long time, but I still haven't gone back to it because I thought it was I thought it was incredible, but I just haven't gone back to it because I'm not sure if I'm strong enough.
It's a really bleak. All his stuff's just bleak as though.
Oh, Welcome to the Dollhouse is
Oh,
traumatizing. I can't. Dawn Wiener, is that the girl's name? The
yeah,
character
yeah.
Heather Matarazzo. Oh, yeah, it's excruciating. That's probably. I mean, that qualifies, I think, for horror in many ways. Um, yeah, good lord. Oh, Dylan
Mhm.
Baker, what have you done to us? Um, yeah, there's certainly some good werewolves out there, but yes, I think we are due for hopefully not Underworld 12, but some kind of monumental werewolf film. I'm glad
Mm.
that they haven't remade American Werewolf in London, which I guess has probably been thrown around. I guess John Landis owns it. I don't know. Um, that's good because I wouldn't want to see that. But who knows what will come down the
No,
pike?
they
There
do
was a
keep
Howling
talking.
reboot. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
they keep talking about dog soldiers and other dog soldiers as well.
The Howling remake is
Yes.
being developed for Netflix by
Oh
Andy
no,
Muschietti.
by Zack
Oh,
Snyder.
he's back. It's
No,
4 hours.
Andy
And
Muschietti's a good director.
oh, okay.
He did Mama. Did he do Mama?
Yeah, and
Yes.
also the
Okay.
It films, didn't he? The most recent ones.
Yes. Which I'm not. I haven't gone back to those, but I did like them generally. The It films.
I preferred the first
Um.
one more than the second.
Yeah, I really like the It films.
Yes. I'll have to. I need to rewatch them just to be sure. To be sure. But yeah, there was some very good stuff in the It films for sure. And yeah. Hmm. Well, I think that's probably it. I think
Mm.
we've covered the werewolf genre and had some nice nostalgia dips. Did you all have American Werewolf on VHS? Did you have it to
Yes.
like keep and revisit? Yeah,
Yeah, and just rewind the transformation until
I
the tape
miss
runs
like
out.
I miss VHS.
Yeah.
me too. Yeah, I greatly missed those days, and yeah, VHS had them lined up. I know I had Gremlins. There's a few I had that I watched so many times, like Halloween. The first one was one of them.
Uh,
Gremlins, possibly
when,
Ghostbusters, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
when you tape films off the television.
Oh,
Yes. Yeah, that was great. Fast forward the adverts
Yeah.
and
and
sometimes if it was one of those, the news at 10
the 10 o'clock
would be in the
news.
middle
Yeah, I
of
was
it.
about to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And Die Hard continues after the news at 10. What? And it wasn't just the news at 10, it was the weather, then it was the local news, and here's Anglia news. What?
Half an hour
Plus,
later.
so you're watching. Die Hard has already been compromised by every bad word being, melon farmer or funster or something. And now
Yeah.
you've got Trevor McDonald halfway through the Nakatomi Tower. And bird's eye fish fingers every 10 minutes.
Because there
Unbelievable.
was that edit of Repo Man, wasn't there, which was Flip You Melon Farmer.
Yes, Alex Cox is yeah, that's a legendary thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's actually on the disc. I think they've got the TV the TV edit. They would cut the most bizarre things. I remember there's a line in Lethal Weapon that I never knew what the real line was until about 20 years later, but I think it's someone says, "Oh, look, she's all dressed up with no one to blow," and they've changed it to "nowhere to go." So the joke fell flat. There was no joke. And then eventually, oh, no one to blow. That makes more sense now. Yes, yes. Um, and the great line from multiple Migs in the next cell in Silence of the Lambs was
Yeah.
changed to "I can smell your scent," which again, it's not quite the same effect.
No.
Um, oh, memories of jizz flinging once again enter the mind. Every evening ends with the same memories. Yes, I think that's it. I mean, a reminder to check out the Brain Bites blog, which is not easy to say when you've had some Johnny Knock Me Downs, as they say. And where should one check out your work, Matt? Is it your website? Where's the best place that one could go and peruse your stuff?
The Lightning Thesaurus and the Dead Friend are both available both through Enchanted Forest Publishing and on Amazon. My website, www.mbblissett.com, also will feature links to my books past and present. I'm also going to be a guest at Great Yarmouth Comic Con on August 14th and 15th this year, where I'll be selling copies of both books. So if you're in the area and you want to come down and say hi, you're more welcome to do so.
Nice. Thanks, Matt. That's awesome, actually, that you've got your place there.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I did recently, which it's not just me self-promoting or anything, but I did a piece for Scream magazine on wax museum films. And when I set out to write it, my main aim was to suggest this piece to the magazine in the hope they'd be interested. But the main thing was to shoehorn in a little section about the notoriously shit wax museum in Great Yarmouth.
Oh yeah.
And I was desperate. I did kind of plead to them to like include at least one still from one of the waxworks, whether it was Victoria Beckham having a stroke, or so it seemed, or Roy Hattersley or something from hell. But I don't think they went for it, so they've gone for movie pics instead. But yeah, it was called the House of Wax, right?
Yes,
Wax
it
Museum.
was.
Yeah, it's sadly gone, but that was one of Norfolk's great treasures, I think. Good Lord. But yes, thank you everyone for listening, and thanks to Matt for coming. We'll be hearing from you again very soon, I'm sure. And thanks for Sarah as usual. It's been fun. The next episode 21, will be available at the end of July. Is that the month that comes next? Okay, July.
That is.
And episode 21 will be all about the Romero zombie trilogy, but not that one, because that one's been done. And we're going to be talking about the trilogy that came later, which is actually really interesting as well, which is Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, and Survival of the Dead. Sadly, 3 of the movies at the very end of his career, as it turned out. But we'll be chewing the fat over those next time, available at the end of July. But until then, thanks for listening. And obviously, it's a jolly good night from me, and also from Matt.
Good night.
And of course, from Sarah.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys. Bye for now.